Could the Miami Heat consider a trade for Cleveland Cavaliers point guard Darius Garland? That is the topic of today's Heat Report episode. I am Nic Rohloff. And the Heat, they probably need to make a boost to this roster if they want to compete for a title, and maybe Garland could be that piece, or maybe he is just simply the plan after this season and potentially when Jimmy Butler leaves. We'll talk about it all, but first, make sure you're following me on Twitter, and if you want a shout out on the next show, the first 5 people to give your boy a follow on X/Twitter will get a shout out on the episode on Tuesday. At Nic_Rohloff's the handle. I tweet about the Heat on a daily basis. And when the season starts in a couple weeks and when training camp gets underway, we're going to have the latest news, updates on the channel, but as well as on my social media. So go give me a follow and you'll get a shout out on the next show. All right, Bleacher Report suggested the Garland trade, and I wanted to show what they had to say. The Heat are at a bit of a crossroads. Butler is eligible for an extension, but the franchise is seemingly hesitant to recommit. The goal is to stay competitive, and that could include Butler, or he may be the big contract Miami uses in a trade. Optimistically, if the Cavaliers decide to move Darius Garland, he would be an ideal target to join Bam Adebayo, Jaime Jaquez Jr., and whoever else the Heat choose to keep long term. Miami only has one future first to offer, 2030 or 2031, but Herro could be an enticing player for Cleveland or a third team. And you saw Bleacher Report kind of mentioned it, right? When they're suggesting a Darius Garland trade to the Miami Heat, they are not suggesting it happen right now or happen before the trade deadline to add Garland to this team with Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. That's not what they're suggesting, and I actually believe that is probably the smarter decision. If you were to trade for Darius Garland and add him to this Heat roster, I think that's your plan post Jimmy Butler. Not saying that Garland couldn't fit with Jimmy and Bam, just in terms of taking money in and sending money out, it becomes very complicated if you are trying to fit in Garland, Bam, and Jimmy's contract all together. So maybe he's the guy who you pair with Adebayo when Jimmy leaves, potentially after this season. Garland's one of the more natural point guards in the NBA, and listen, he is one of the premier assist guys in the NBA. But the issue is that after Donovan Mitchell got brought into this team, and it's now been 2 full seasons with D. Mitch in Cleveland, and he will be there for the extended future after signing a massive contract extension this offseason, that's when Garland's assist numbers kind of took a little bit of a dip because Mitchell is playing more on ball. Garland's forced to be a little bit more off ball than he was prior to Mitchell joining that team. And his numbers did go down. You see the points per game dipped down significantly this past season. The assist numbers, the field goal percentage, the three-point percentage, still a relatively efficient basketball player, but it just simply has not been the same since Donovan Mitchell joined the team. And how could we forget earlier this offseason when it was reported before Mitchell signed his extension that Garland could request a trade and would request a trade from the Cavaliers if Mitchell committed long-term because he just didn't see himself and Donovan Mitchell really working as a backcourt duo in the future. And I agree. I don't think it works for them. And I am kind of puzzled on why they didn't try to move Darius Garland after Mitchell committed long-term, because it's clear that D. Mitch is the top dog there. So why wouldn't Garland shift over and maybe you get some better 2s and 3s to help connect with Mobley and Allen in the front court and have a better overall fit on their roster? But we'll talk about the potential fit with Miami for Darius Garland coming up in just a second. But are you interested in the former top 5 overall pick from Vanderbilt and current all-star caliber guard? Type Y for yes or type N for no. I think Darius Garland is a very fine player. Do I think he's some top-tier point guard in the NBA? Probably not. I actually compare him a lot to Trae Young, but he just might be the Walmart version. You saw the numbers. Trae Young gives you 25 and 10 on a nightly basis. And sure, Darius Garland is more efficient, but they play the same exact way. They are both undersized point guards who don't defend that well and don't finish inside the restricted area well at all. They rely on their speed, their athleticism, their ball handling, shiftiness, and jump shot to really get themselves open and then set themselves up for a nice little 10-foot floaters and pull-ups in the mid-range area. I think he is a good playmaker as well, and I think a him and Bam Adebayo pick and roll would be a lot of fun. But that's kind of how I view it. If you're going to make a move for a smaller point guard, why wouldn't you go out and just try to do Trae Young, who is also likely available on the trade market? Well, it might be because his contract is actually a little bit better than Trae Young's. He's currently under contract for the next 4 seasons before becoming an unrestricted free agent in 2028, 2029. And if you remember, we flashed Trae Young's contract on the channel quite a bit over the offseason. He's making much more closer to mid 40s and close to $50 million for the Atlanta Hawks. And Garland just simply isn't even reaching that. Obviously, if you make a deal, it's likely not going to mean anything for this year's salary. It would be at the deadline or potentially next offseason. So you would potentially get him on a 3-year deal at $39, $42, and $44.8 million. And even though I'm not the highest on Darius Garland, when you think of his contract in comparison to other players inside the NBA, I actually think Garland's contract is pretty manageable, right? Like, I put him on the same tier as Brandon Ingram in terms of NBA players. And maybe Ingram would be a better fit and better second option to Bam Adebayo if they were both evenly evaluated as long-term replacements of Jimmy as that number 2 and the second fiddle to Bam Adebayo. Maybe Ingram would be a better fit. But to me, they're both in that same tier of giving you 20 points per game, not the best defense. Brandon Ingram wants a new contract with $50 million per season. You would get Garland potentially for 3 years, and his highest year being $44.8 million. So to me, with the cap continuing to go up in the NBA and players just continuing to get more and more money on an annual average basis, I think having Garland potentially over the next 3.5, 4 seasons at $45 million and less every single year is actually good value, because you can spin that as a low 2 option or a high 3rd option inside the NBA, like we saw with OG Anunoby's contract with the Knicks, where he got paid low $40 million and he's their 3rd, 4th option. So it's certainly intriguing. We're going to talk more about Darius Garland here in just a second, but we are sponsored by PrizePicks, the #1 daily fantasy sports app with more than 5 million active members. I play PrizePicks on a daily basis, and I would encourage you to do the same, because it's the easiest way to play daily fantasy sports. And unlike other apps, PrizePicks, you just play against the numbers. And there are still 2 more weekends of football in September. One Caleb Williams passing yard gets you 1 win on PrizePicks every week in September. That's right, only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend. It was 4 weeks of free W's, but if you're just signing up now, you can still get 2 weeks with the next 2 weekends of football. Don't miss this deal on PrizePicks, because it's over when September ends. I've got an actual basketball entry here for the entire season. Our guy Bam Adebayo, more than 9.9 rebounds per game, more than Jalen Brunson, 6.8 assists per game, and then less than Zachary Risachet, 10.2 points per game. 3-player entry to win 5 times my money, but you can actually win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. When you customize, you could use those demons, goblins. That's why PrizePicks is so fun. They have daily totals, they have season-long numbers, and they allow you to customize the way you want to play. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play 5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Shout out to PrizePicks for sponsoring today's video. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, let's shift over now to Darius Garland and who he is as an offensive player, because his career shot chart tells us a lot about him as a point guard. And it's intriguing to see. Remember, light blue bad, dark blue good. So he, as you see, is not good at finishing in the restricted area amongst the trees. And that goes back to his small, light frame, where he's not that tall, but just barely 6'1", 6'2". And then he also doesn't have a lot of muscles and weight on him to finish through contact. But he is able to combat that by having an excellent 6 to 8 foot floater game. You see that dark blue just outside the restricted area. That is what he likes to do. He gets downhill after getting you on up in the air at the top of the key, and when he drives, he looks to finish and stop for that nice little floater, which he's become so effective at. But the thing that is actually intriguing to me is that 3-point number. Look how luscious it is around the 3-point arc there. He won't shy away from shooting from any spot on the field or the court, and he is also very efficient. But the concern that I have if you acquire Darius Garland is I want to go back to that defense or the inefficiency at the restricted area, because this is something Miami already struggles with now with their two lead guards. We've talked about this in the past with both Tyler Herro and Terry Rozier. And I get it. If you have Garland, you're not going to have both Herro and Rozier on this roster. But it's so difficult to have a very consistent offense when your lead guard and ball handler is not a good finisher at the rim. We talked about it, right? Tyler Herro has a 50% finishing rate, at least it was last season at the rim. League average is 59.9, so he's 9% under league average. Terry Rozier is at 54.5% in the restricted area. That's 5% lower than league average. That's unacceptable, but that's where Garland sits at as well. He, in his career, is a 50% finisher at the restricted area when the league average is 59, so that is a concern. But he's able to make up for it on the offensive end by that floater, but also being above league average from every part of the floor beyond the arc. Look at these numbers. 3% above league average in right corner, 3% above in right wing, 3% in the top of the key, 2% in the left wing, and another 2% in the left corner. He is, excuse me, an excellent three-point shooter. Terrific. There is not many players in the NBA that you can point to and say they are above league average since joining the NBA at every single spot of the floor beyond the arc. It is truly impressive considering, by the way, most of it is off the dribble and pull-ups, step backs, side steps, because he is a guard. He is not catching and shooting often. He has the ball in his hand some of the times. Now, there are situations where he gets kicked out when he catches and shoots off Donovan Mitchell drives, but it is not that common. And the question is, when you were to talk a Darius Garland trade, if you are not trading for him right now, what would it cost next off season? We're going to talk about that here in just a second, but we do want to make sure you are subscribed to the channel because Heat training camp begins in 2 weeks, October 1st. It's basically 2 weeks to the dot. Make sure you are subscribed because we're going to have the latest news, notes out of training camp. We're going to be live for almost every single Miami Heat basketball game this season, including the preseason that is going to get underway in about a month. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel because we do it all. Watch parties, news, rumors. Join the channel. We're on the rocket ship. Let's get to 14K subs. All right, when you're talking about a potential Darius Garland trade cost, this is kind of where I think things stand. I truly believe it would cost you Tyler Herro, 2 first-round picks, and salary filler. And like that article mentioned from Bleacher Report earlier, I think the chances of the trade happening and Herro going to like a third team is actually higher than him going to Cleveland because I don't think a Mitchell and Herro backcourt would work. It's like I don't think a Garland and Mitchell backcourt works in Cleveland. But if they, after another season, this would be the year 3, by the way, with D. Mitch and Darius Garland, if they cannot get past the second round of the Eastern Conference playoffs for the 3rd straight year in this duo, and even say if they get bounced in the first round or having an underwhelming season, there's enough evidence, just like in Atlanta with Trae Young and DeJounte Murray, that backcourt won't yield long-term good results, which means Garland could become available in the offseason like he semi-was here, and maybe that's where Miami pounces if Jimmy Butler ultimately leaves. Sending Herro to a third team, sending a first-round pick and a swap potentially to Cleveland, plus salary filler from your own roster, and then you get potentially that third team that you're sending Herro to send something to Cleveland, and that might net you Darius Garland in the 305. And this is going to be my last word on today's day and show. I don't know if Darius Garland is the best possible option to make that move for, right? Have the second option be for the Miami Heat. But I do think it's very, very important for this Heat roster to add a true and natural above-average point guard to help alleviate pressure for Bam Adebayo post-Jimmy Butler. Because listen, we'll have to see how it plays out this year, but there's a reasonable chance that Jaime Jaquez Jr. proves to be that guy that you have faith in if Jimmy leaves to be a top 3 player on this team. Maybe Nikola Jovic takes a step. You got Kel'el Ware waiting in the wings. And maybe the missing piece might be a true natural point guard. And that's where I think it's very important for Miami to add one. I don't think he has to be some star-studded guy that is an all-NBA, top 5 point guard in the league, but getting yourself a top 10 true point guard that can defend, can shoot, can pass would be very enticing to me. And honestly, I'm going to throw out this name potentially. We'll see. I'm always been a fan of his game, how about Lonzo Ball, right? He's coming back for Chicago this year. If he's able to stay healthy, he's going to be a free agent after the season. If he doesn't rehab his stock and he could get him on the cheap potentially for like $10 million per year, I think he'd be a really good fit in Miami due to his ability to defend, shoot, and play make. And that's just a name that I'll throw out there that just came off the head. Like a Tyus Jones even would make a lot of sense for Miami. Someone to just help run the pick and roll for Bam and make his life easier. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode. Appreciate everyone for tuning in. Like I said, first 5 people to follow me off of today's video will get a shout out tomorrow on our Tuesday episode. @Nic_Rohloff is the handle. So hopefully I see you over there.